Thank you guys. Thank you for welcoming us to the stage. I guess I'd just like to start by building on the wisdom that's already been shared to us during the course of this event. Jade Begay kicked us off by reminding us that it's not enough to just remove the colonizer, but we actually have to invest in the bold vision of the partners who are here on the ground with us. And then the integrated capital, did anybody else get a text message that said Rudy for president during that? That was, yeah. Woo! But reminding us that integrated capital is the people. Let's not make it more complicated. Mark's reminder that integrated capital is not new. The mentioning, bringing our colleague Cicely to the stage and reminding us that we have heavy personal work to do. And then Yolanda, beautiful, beautiful setup. It's critical that Yolanda's voice goes first on a panel like this. And the braided, woven intention of braided collaboration was an enormous, that's the perfect setup for our setup, so thank you.
And before we start, I just want to say that we are excited to share this talk. And we also want to acknowledge something that I think we all know, that we are not investing our way to a more equitable and just food system, or to racial and economic justice, or to climate and environmental justice. We see integrated capital as just one tool among many that we can use to move forwards to what we all want.
Yeah, so with that, what if we told you that in this room, we all have the power to fundamentally shift the way that capital flows in the US? Not someday, not with complex policy changes, but rooted in the relationships that we already have, as our panelists before said.
We are up here today to talk about that capital flow. Our project has moved $20+ million in integrated capital to Black, Indigenous, POC-led community-controlled funds and intermediaries, and what it might mean to be responsive to these groups who are already collectively managing hundreds of millions of dollars and moving grants and loans directly to farmers, tribes, and food justice organizations all across the country.
So my name is Avery from the No Regrets Initiative. This is my colleague Anthony from Manzanita Capital Collective. We definitely do not have all of the answers, but we are here to share one small puzzle piece of a groundswell of work that's been bubbling up from frontline communities of color. And we're here to talk about the Waterway Partnership and to offer another way for funders and investors to move philanthropic and investment capital.
Here's a few snapshots of what on-the-ground partners have shared with us. A Black farmer in the Southeast that can't get the capital that they need to gain long-term land stability and acquire land. A Native-led food enterprise in the Dakotas that can't get the resources for their work restoring traditional foodways. A group of Latinx immigrant organic farmers in California that need a complex integrated capital stack, or as Rudy reminded us, just a pile of money from different sources, to make collective ownership of land and food distribution infrastructure affordable.
And these folks often have to pitch their community dreams to their funders and their investors in boardrooms that are thousands of miles away, who speak the purposefully exclusionary language of finance. And they have to translate their lived experience into grant applications and spreadsheets, and they have to prove their worth to people who have never walked their land.
And if they get that funding, it often comes with strings attached. Requirements that don't match community needs, timelines that ignore seasonal realities, or loan terms that extract more wealth than they provide.
And meanwhile, some of the people making these funding decisions, well-meaning people like me, are operating from their own limited experience, often missing some of the most impactful solutions coming from the ground up on frontline communities of color. Oh, I keep going, that's right. God. Okay. So in 2023, we experimented with another way. The No Regrets Initiative, where I work as part of Sally Calhoun's Family Foundation, and when we are in our planned spend down phase, we partnered with Manzanita Capital Collective, where Anthony is part of an Indigenous and people of color-led group with deep relationships in frontline communities.
Alongside Avery's colleague at No Regrets, Esther Park, and my colleagues at Manzanita Capital Collective, Mariela Cedeño and Ade Romero Briones, we came together to figure out a different way to make decisions and move capital.
And here's the key thing that made this experiment work. Mark already laid it out for us. No Regrets and Manzanita did not create anything new. The Black, Indigenous, and people of color community-controlled funds and intermediaries have been bubbling up and growing for years, primarily through relationships that Manzanita held No Regrets just plugged in to add more resources to an existing and emergent mosaic of network already created by farmers, food justice leaders, and alliances and networks.
Another key ingredient in this partnership, the No Regrets team saw us, Manzanita Capital Collective, as a partner and a peer. They listened, we debated and exchanged ideas, and we made decisions together, including where all the capital goes.
And just to put a finer point on what Anthony just shared, we at No Regrets, a family foundation, said we have $20 million to invest, but let's disrupt our pattern of making all of the capital distribution decisions and instead partner as an equal decision maker with Manzanita, who is already in relationship with the communities that need the capital.
Our approach is built on two fundamental principles: shifting capital and shifting power. Shifting capital means moving integrated capital, grants, zero-interest loans, technical assistance, social capital, toward sustainable regenerative food systems and racial justice.
But shifting power, this is where it gets really sweaty. The bigger shift is, this is the bigger shift that we need to grapple with. First, we shared power with Manzanita Capital Collective as a partner, directing the flow of capital. And second, we came to understand that Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led intermediaries and community-controlled funds have been building these containers to collectively govern their own resources, and that channeling capital to these groups can contribute to the building of their economic power and create openings for larger shifts of power over philanthropic assets into the future.
Let's talk for a minute about what moving $20+ million in integrated capital actually looks like. Over 18 months, we made investments ranging from $250,000 to $1 million to over 20 community-controlled funds and intermediaries, most of those loans at 0% interest.
And here's the crucial part. Every one of those investments came with an unrestricted grant of 15% equal to the total loan amount. So $1 million investment came with a $150,000 loan or $150,000 grant, no strings attached, recognizing that in many cases, our partners were building entirely new, context-appropriate community governance models from the ground up.
Nine of these incredible partners are right here at this conference. The National Black Food and Justice Alliance, supporting Black farmers and food justice orgs nationwide, and the EFOD Collaborative, moving capital to Black, Indigenous, POC-led equitable food-oriented development, are both examples of national formations moving grants and loans through collective governance by leaders from and or in deep relationship with frontline communities of color.
Also at this conference, Midwest Farmers of Color, Four Bands Community Fund, and Persimmon Collective, who we'll have a chance to hear from right after us, Black Farmer Fund, Inclusive Action, People's Land Fund, and the Agricultura Cooperative Network, all regional groups of farmers of color, Black or Indigenous or Latinx food enterprises in their communities in the Midwest, in the Southeast, in the Northeast, in the West Coast, and right here in New Mexico.
If you're interested in any of these groups and others we have invested in, please visit the Waterway Partnership website, which Avery created this nice little QR code on the slide. These aren't just recipients of funding, they're partners in reimagining how finance works. We know that when folks on the ground collectively steward their own resources, communities are continuing to build the muscle and staying ready for when public and philanthropic resources are transferred to community and movement-led governance.
And just to be clear, at the beginning of this project, we at No Regrets were not in the relationships with very many community-controlled funds and integrated capital intermediaries. But what's beautiful about this approach is that No Regrets didn't have to start from scratch. Manzanita Capital Collective was already plugged into networks and circles like with our colleagues here in this room, like Heal Food Alliance and Castanea and the Life Collaborative and EFOD, who Rudy spoke of, and the Climate Justice Alliance, just to name a few. And those are the places that our waterway partnerships emerged from.
Working on this project, we kept coming back to the idea of prioritizing, as other people on the panel before us said, relationships over transactions. Instead of requiring organizations to prove themselves through extractive due diligence processes, we asked, what do you need? What do your communities need? Are there ways in which you might be able to leverage integrated capital to advance your work?
And at No Regrets, we have an even deeper appreciation of the fact that community-controlled funds and intermediaries are incredibly sophisticated. They know their communities, they understand multi-stakeholder risk, and they're working with approaches to non-extractive finances that most traditional lenders, including foundations like No Regrets, have never imagined.
These funds are using integrated capital, combining grants, loans, and technical assistance in ways that actually meet community needs, rather than continuing to make frontline communities of color takers of the extractive tools in the traditional finance marketplace as they've historically done.
And they're redefining what finance and risk looks like. While traditional finance sees a lack of collateral as high risk, these funds understand that a farmer's deep knowledge of their land and their community's investment in their own success are forms of security that a spreadsheet cannot capture. My colleague Esther likes to say, risk is just another way of saying that there's a lack of relationship.
And these Black, Indigenous, POC-led, community-controlled funds and intermediaries are already out here managing hundreds of millions of dollars in capital and reaching thousands of farmers and land stewards, food hubs, food justice projects, and more impact that conventional CDFIs and finance are not reaching. This project is just making a small contribution to the wave that has already been building by folks that we are already in a relationship with. Now let's be clear about what we're building toward. For many frontline communities of color, we understand that the North Star around philanthropy is the complete redistribution of wealth, the transfer of philanthropic and investor assets directly to community governance.
And many philanthropic institutions aren't there yet.
But if you are, come talk to us.
No Regrets is still on our own journey, So in the meantime, these community-controlled funds are managing hundreds of millions of dollars collectively. They're building infrastructure that we need for our collective future. And many of them are practicing collective governance. They are accountable to frontline communities of color, and they're showing how communities can steward resources that meet their community's needs.
This Waterway Partnership project is not the end-all be-all in any way. There's way, way, way more radical work to be done, and we see this $20 million as just one small contribution to a much larger tapestry of collective work. And we believe that this is a step towards shifting capital and power, and that we all have the opportunity to take a step in this direction.
And so as we close, here's my question to funders and investors in this room. What would it look like for you to shift not only your capital, but also your power?
Instead of asking, how do I find the right communities to invest in, we can ask, who can we connect with that comes from and is accountable to frontline communities of color?
And if you're managing a foundation or a family office, consider, what would it mean to share decision-making power with from the communities that you want to support?
And to get started with all of this, some of the mechanics are straightforward. You can start with pairing grants with modest, non-extractive program-related investments or impact allocations. You can partner and share power with organizations that are already positioned to do this work. You can keep the process as simple and easeful as possible, and you can build relationships before you execute transactions.
And if you want to talk more about what building relationships look like for us, or having transparency on where we fell short, come and join us for the breakout session at 10:45 right here in this room with our partners from Persimmon Collective and 4 Bands. And we'll walk you through exactly how this partnership works. We'll share what we learned, we'll connect you to some of the incredible intermediary funds that we've supported.
But whether you can join us or not, please remember this. The infrastructure for a more just food system and economy already exists. The communities you're trying to support are already building the solutions. Your role isn't to create those solutions for them, it's to resource the ones that already exist and be in service to community leadership.
So the question isn't whether we can create the change. The question is, will we trust frontline communities to lead their own transformation?
Thank you.
Thanks.